Before we get into this week's episode, if you guys have been enjoying our podcast, we are up to episode 33, 34, something like that. We do need for people to please, if you're enjoying this, follow us, download the episodes, and give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast streaming platform you use.
I'm Nurse Jessica St, along with Nurse Erica. We're Nurses Uncorked, the podcast that takes nursing facts with nursing comedy and makes a little cocktail out of it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Nurses Uncorked. I hope everybody is doing great. It's myself, Nurse Jessica St, along with Nurse Erica, and we are back with a topic that we want to give a trigger warning about. This is an episode that we covered actually back on our 6th podcast ever, but it does talk about fetal death and loss of a baby during the process of labor. So if any of that is anything that might be disturbing or uncomfortable to you, this is not the podcast to listen to. So having that said and getting that out of the way, we're going to be providing today. I'm going to get into some story details here in a minute, but we're going to be providing some pretty important updates regarding that episode and what has transpired since. So if you're at all wondering what we're talking about, we're going to get into it in a second, but it does have to do with the loss of a baby and the decapitation of a baby back in July. But before that, because we're Nurses Uncorked and I may need a drink to deal with this topic this week. This is another, the last time we did it, it was tough talking about it. So, right, Erica? It was
I don't think anyone had ever heard of a case like this before that one. So everyone was in
very
shock,
disturbing.
And it was terrible.
Yes, very, very huge shock. So before we get into that, this is going to be a quick and easy drink of the week. So I never do beer, but my husband the other day opened this drink and he's like, you have to try it. And I was like, every time he does it, I'm like, oh, whatever. But this is a beer actually, and it's called a Baja Blast. It's 0 sugar and it has Mountain Dew in it. Okay, it sounds weird, but
yeah,
I
like
love
the
caffeine.
Taco Bell thing, right? Baja Blast, isn't that?
So it's only 100 calories and it's got a decent kick, 5% alcohol, but it tastes like berry Mountain Dew heaven. So basically it's like a diet Mountain Dew mixed in with a beer somehow, but it's I recommend it if you're not a beer drinker, but you want to I don't know, have a beer like you're at a game, and it's blue. Look how cool. Can you see,
It's
Erica?
blue?
It's like a...
Oh, yeah, it is. It looks like a Baja Blast. But it's beer?
It reminds me... Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Does it taste like beer? Can you taste the beer at all?
Well, let me remind myself. Hold on. It doesn't taste like a typical beer, but you can kind of tell...
Okay.
That it's a beer. It almost has because it's like a seltzery kind of kick mixed in with beer. That's the best way I could describe it. Like it's
Who
bubbly
makes it?
And well, I mean, this is made by I guess by Mountain Dew.
Oh, really?
It's Mountain Dew. I don't know.
We need to get these brands to start sponsoring our podcast. Like we're given so many free ads to all the different alcohol.
It says it's a beer. It's a malt beverage, and it's by Mountain Dew, and it's their hard 0 sugar Baja Blast. I don't know. It's good. So cheers to that. And
cheers.
God, it really doesn't taste like alcohol at all.
I have
this
coffee
is kind of
because
disturbing.
It's 9 a.m.
Don't tell the people. Don't tell them. Jeez. Don't give it away.
She's on the East Coast. She can get away with it.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. All right, let's get into this topic. So in order to remind you guys about it, and like I was saying earlier, our initial podcast, the link will be in the description. If you can't find the description, it was episode 6. But back in July, there was a horrific story that came out in the news about a couple that had gone into labor. The mom was a gestational diabetic, went into labor, first time mom. And there was a whole slew of events that kind of transpired towards the end. The mom, got to pushing like people typically do. The pushing phase took quite a while, from what I understand, a couple hours, which can be first time mom, not that unheard of or untypical. But the facts of the case, this is where it kind of gets a little bit wacky. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of arguments on both sides of the coin here, but evidently they were having trouble getting the baby's head to finish descending, like the last bit of, getting the baby to kind of
Mm-hmm.
come out. So they decided to do some types of maneuvers and whatnot to try to get the actual. Did they, Eric? I'm trying to remember. Did they assist the baby out with forceps or something first, or a vacuum? They think they used a vacuum first. I want.
Not that I
Don't quote me on
recall.
that.
They may have, but
But
I think that
I
there's
want to
still
say
a
that
lot
they
of
did.
details that have not been released yet.
I'll refresh my memory on that. But what happened was, once the head was actually delivered, they could not get the shoulders to come out from underneath the mom's pubic bone. So the baby essentially got wedged in there. A certain amount of time passed. Okay. And for people that aren't familiar, when a baby's head is delivered, there's you're basically cutting off their oxygen supply at that point. They're not breathing anymore through the mom's circulatory system. They need to get external air, but they can't do that because they're essentially being suffocated. So it's a huge time crunch. So from whatever maneuvers they tried, tugged, pulled, tried to get this baby delivered, and the doctor could not. There were other things that the family, I guess, is stating went on. Whether there was other physicians called to help or not. I think all these different things will come out. But essentially, they could not, no matter what the physician did, she couldn't get the shoulders to deliver. So the physician attempted what's called a Zalvanelli, which is a very rare maneuver where you actually try to push the baby back up into the pelvis as best you can to rush back for an emergency C-section in an effort to deliver the baby abdominally. So that all happened. They ran back for an emergency C-section. I believe there was a whole bunch of events in trying to get the baby delivered at that point because it was so wedged. Long story short, unfortunately, when the baby was removed from the abdomen during the C-section, the baby had been found to have been decapitated at some point, whether it was in the delivery room or whether it was in the operating room. That has not specifically come out yet, which in of itself is horrific. Okay, that's awful. The mother obviously has lost a child, 37 weeks, a full-term baby, and then what happens after that? Right,
Oh, it
Erica,
gets even
is
worse.
really.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And we should say that the hospital, which is Southern Regional Medical Center in Georgia, they deny
Yes.
all of these allegations. And their stance is that the baby suffered the decapitation in utero, not during delivery, which is weird, right? But they deny all
that
allegations.
makes no sense.
Yeah.
And then they have also said in the news, that the doctor is not an employee of the hospital, which sounds bad, but
that's
usually
normal. That's how it always is.
Yes. And for most lay people, they don't really get that. So it sounds like she was just walking in and like some Joe Schmo
and they're
off
making
the
it
street.
sound like they fired this doctor and they were never really an employee there. No, that's how it works. Doctors have privileges. The doctor had privileges
Right.
there and is contracted by an outside OBGYN company, but that's very common.
Correct. So I guess once the mother got to recovery and whatnot, the mom wanted to see the baby. The family wanted to see the baby, which is not untypical at all. But that's highly
because
encouraged.
they told them the baby died, but not about the decapitation.
Correct. Right. So yes, that part they were aware that the baby unfortunately had passed, but most mothers, especially when it's a full-term baby, they want to see their baby to mourn the loss of their baby. Now, for whatever reason, they did not tell them about the decapitation, so they told them they could only see the baby through a window. So
So
they were
strange.
not given that opportunity to hold their newborn that had passed, unfortunately. So, in an effort, I guess, to not disclose to the family for whatever reason about the decapitation, they propped the baby and wrapped it and swaddled it and propped, so hard to say, the infant's head on the torso, on the body, in an effort to make it appear that it was still intact.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was not until many days later that it was divulged by, I think, the funeral director.
The funeral home called them 4 days later because they had wanted an autopsy. They asked for an autopsy, the parents, and the hospital said there was no need, and they pushed them to
Right.
cremate, which is a little suspicious, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
4 days
'Cause
later, the
of
funeral
any
home.
delivery of any delivery, this one would qualify for an autopsy. I mean,
Sure.
you have
Yeah.
an unusual death, a
Yeah, on a
decapitation,
full
which they knew
term.
about. Yeah. So, but whatever, for whatever reason, they said that they shouldn't. But I think the family wanted that. They didn't want a cremation. They wanted, a burial. And I think they were calling to kind of give them a warning about maybe the appearance of the
Mhm.
baby. And that was the
And they
first
mention
time.
it, the decapitation, and
Yeah. That's how they
can you
found out, was
imagine
from.
finding out like you're already
No.
grieving, but then, oh my God, I can't even.
My initial thought would be like, well, that's a mistake. Do they have my kid confused with, I mean, that would be
Yeah.
my initial thought. But then I bet they started putting the pieces together like, well, wait, they didn't
Yeah.
let me
Yeah.
hold my baby. Like, and then like, where do you go from there? Like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't even know what to do. Who do you call? What do you,
Well, they did get an attorney, and there was
thank goodness.
shortly thereafter they announced a civil lawsuit, and it is against the hospital, Southern Regional Medical Center. It is against the OBGYN group, which is Premier Women's OBGYN, and it is against the medical personnel and the doctor specifically. So there have been
Dr.
some
St. Julian, I
updates.
believe. I can't believe
Yeah,
that
I
just came to
think.
my head.
Yeah.
Something like
That
that.
was good.
We'll verify that. But yeah, just all of a sudden was like, bing. Okay, carry on.
And so their allegation is that the doctor applied excessive traction to the baby's head, causing it to detach, and that the nurses didn't speak up or advocate. So that's kind of where it was left last year in July when this happened, and the attorney and the parents gave a press conference. And so we haven't really had much of an update since then until now. So earlier this week, the medical examiner finally released the manner of death, and it is listed as homicide. They determined it is a homicide. And so
I think that's a pretty hard thing to put, right? I mean, you have to be certain.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be pretty certain that that's what happened to be able to put that down. So that was a big deal.
Yeah, a really big deal. And the cause of death is listed as, this is a mouthful, fracture dislocation with complete transection to the upper cervical spine and spinal cord. Okay. But now we have the manner of death as homicide. And so from here, the medical examiner passes that information on to the district attorney. It will be up to the district attorney whether or not they want to pursue criminal charges. I think they will, but that has not been announced or confirmed yet. So what we currently have is a civil lawsuit, and there's actually 2 civil lawsuits, another update, which we'll get to later. And so they are naming, I guess, 5 or 6 nurses, I believe, that were involved in the care in this civil lawsuit, accusing them of gross negligence, that they owed a duty to the mother and baby, and that they failed to advocate. And it goes on to say that there was no documentation that was taken about the distress. And I need you to weigh in on this, because for those that don't know, Jessica
Mm-hmm.
is an L&D nurse for like a bazillion years. So this is her area of expertise. So this is what it says. No
Okay.
documentation or no documented action was taken about the distress noted on the fetal monitor. The strips show repeated and consistent category 3 strips at 9:26 p.m. with persistent late decels until 10:36 p.m. No documentation of any resuscitative measures taken whatsoever. So does that seem
That's not good.
appropriate or shocking to you?
There's 2 things that go in my head. Either A, whoever the lead nurse was on this is a horrible documenter. Like, and that's why
And there are some
we
nurses
always
that
say,
are.
and Eric always says,
Yeah.
document, 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 because if it's
Mhm.
not there, you didn't do it. It doesn't matter if you did it. I mean,
Yep.
as an L&D nurse, you are trained, especially if you see late decels, because late decels, essentially what that means, I mean, that's a category 3 tracing, which means that the baby is not getting oxygen adequately the way that it should be getting. Okay. So you have a contraction, and then at some point from the peak of the contraction to after, you can see the baby's heart rate dip down before it comes back up. And so that's meaning it's undergoing stress, it's not getting proper oxygenation, and it's having a hard time recovering and getting its heart rate back up. So when we start to see those as nurses, you do have to do interventions. I mean, a multitude of things. The doctor needs to be made aware. You better get that doctor in there, review the tracing. You better try to do anything you can to resolve it. Position changes, fluid boluses, maybe cutting down Pitocin if there's Pitocin on, turning it off. There's all sorts of things that you can try to do to see if you can eliminate this, but all of that needs to be charted and needs to be and as a nurse, if you are telling a doctor and they're not doing anything about it, that's a whole nother story. Chain of command, utilizing your chain of command. The doctor can't come to the bedside to review. Notified charge nurse, notified. If it's not there, though, like we're saying, they didn't do it. So the fact that they are saying that they are as obvious late decelerations since 9:26, and I think the baby delivered at almost midnight.
It was after
That's
midnight, right after midnight.
that's a long time to go being compromised. That combined with a stressful attempt at, oh my gosh. So
So it's bad.
yeah, that's the best way I can
In
weigh
your
in. I was going to
clinical
say either
expert
A,
opinion, it's bad.
oh, the whole thing is bad. Either they physically didn't do it, which to me is the worst. I mean, if
Right.
you're just didn't notify the doctor, I mean,
Yeah.
that's horrible. Okay. But, or B, they did it, but they were, and I can't imagine, especially after having this kind of outcome, that you would not go
Yeah.
back and
Isn't
put
that crazy?
everything.
Like, even if you're a terrible
Yeah.
documenter, wouldn't you, when it's an extreme case like this, make sure you stay late, do whatever you have to do to really document everything in great detail? But apparently, allegedly, they did not do that,
Crazy.
which is crazy.
I
Yeah.
don't
So
understand that,
the
but
civil lawsuit is saying that the nurses had a duty to advocate for a C-section, and they should have done it much sooner if they did at all. And like you said, chain of command. So even if you have a doctor, and we don't know. We weren't there. We don't know what these nurses did or didn't do. We don't know what the doctor did or didn't do. I'm sure that's all going to come out eventually. But even if you have a terrible doctor, not saying that this one was, but even if you did, the nurse holds a lot of power. and a lot of influence, right? And if you have a doctor that you feel is putting a patient at risk, you can absolutely go above that doctor. You go to your charge nurse, you get your administrator in there, you call attending physicians, you go to the medical director. Like it sucks. It's not easy. It's stressful, but you can absolutely do that. I've done it several times. And so they're saying that they didn't
Now,
do any of that.
without looking at the tracing myself, a lot of times physicians and nurses will have a difference of opinion on what a late decel is. Like the
Okay.
nurse will say that looks like a late to me, and the physician will be like, actually, I think it looks like an early. And an early decel basically means it's normal head compression as they come down the birth canal. Those kind of mirror the contraction, like they dip, but they're a complete mirror of it. So if one person is seeing it differently than the other person, but again, all of that should have been documented. And if you are certain as the nurse that the physician is interpreting it wrong, absolutely you need to be doing something about it. I mean, you have to. You have to go up the chain of command. Now, at the point of the kid's head being stuck, there's nothing you can do but try at that point, but try to assist, and you got to get the kid out. So that's a whole nother thing. Like, who did they call out for? How much help did they get into the room? Did they call the right amount of people to come in and help? Was the charge nurse there? Was another doctor called to the room? Like, these are all things that are going to come out, as well. But sadly, it sounds like this is not looking good for the nurses or the doctor. I don't know how they're going to get out of this one.
In the very least, they're facing a civil lawsuit, right? Which can come with considerable financial impact if they lose in a civil lawsuit. But now they could potentially be facing criminal charges, something along the lines of negligent homicide or manslaughter, I would imagine. We don't know yet. Again, the DA has not said that they're going to, and I sincerely hope that they do not press criminal charges, because you know how I feel about that. Criminal prosecution of nurses is a very dangerous, slippery slope and should not happen. But I think that it probably will.
Yeah,
So.
which is it's scary. I mean, there definitely was some type of medical malpractice, but it's back to that fine line. Did anybody intend to decapitate a baby and have a baby lose its life on purpose?
Yeah, I'm sure. Of course not.
I
Like
can't
there
imagine.
can't be any intention,
Right.
or would
Right.
anyone even think that would be an outcome? Because who's ever heard of this before?
It's just this is why I mentioned you. Me and Erica talked about doing a podcast on this as a follow-up, but this is such an interesting case that I feel like as more and more details come out about this, it's going to be really, really interesting to hear what the specifics were, or how, people interpret the tracing, how people interpret what went on and what happened, or what didn't happen. But the crazy part is, me as an L&D nurse for 21 years straight, bedside L&D, I have never seen that happen on a full-term infant, and I have never been a witness to a Zalvinelli maneuver. And this is that I was at the second busiest hospital in Florida. So It's not like I was at a podunk that we didn't see deliveries.
Right.
I mean, those are rare occurrences. I think on the last podcast I mentioned a lot of times with really early preemies, that have, especially if they've passed away in utero, I have seen that happen because they, unfortunately, there's a lot of specifics. They don't have the tone. They don't have any muscle. They're very thin and pliable. I have unfortunately seen that a couple times with a very, very, very early fetal demise, but never under these circumstances have I ever. So that's why, I mean, at least in my opinion, it's a very horrible, but a case that I am curious to see what exactly went on.
Me too. And so the medical
Yeah.
examiner also listed, along with the manner of death and cause of death, listed contributing factors. So he listed the role of gestational diabetes, premature rupture of membranes, the shoulder dystocia, labor arrest, and fetal entrapment in the birth canal as contributing
Hmm.
factors. And so I'm sure you can speak to this. Why would gestational diabetes potentially be a factor? Because they can be large for gestational age, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, essentially, the baby can be on the bigger side. Um, so a lot of times with gestational diabetics, towards the end, they'll try to get an estimated fetal weight. I don't know if that happened in this case or not. Those can be a little bit off, plus or minus a pound. Do you know, Erica, what the baby weighed? Is that
No,
something
it has not
that
been
they've
released that
said?
I know of. I would be curious to know because, I mean, of course, the bigger the baby, right? Theoretically, the harder it would be, or the more chance that it would get
And
stuck, I imagine.
I believe the mom is not a tall woman, so that's
No,
another thing
she's
that
tiny
is
and only 20
yeah.
years old, first baby.
So it's a combination of diabetes. The baby might be on the big side, but even if it was maybe 8 pounds, that could be huge for her. Like it. So there's a lot of different things to take into account as far as the gestational diabetes. But that's not to say any diabetic mom, first time mom, can't have a delivery. It's just you have to
Right.
weigh all the factors in order to make a decision as to whether um, a mom would need to be c-section. But yes, that could be a contributing factor for sure.
Yeah. And so I was really shocked to find a couple of things that the mom and their attorney has said recently publicly in an interview. Whew. So the mom said, I'm going to read her quote. She's talking to the nurses. Just come forward, please. The nurses that were in the room, please just come forward, please. I just want justice for my baby.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, she's
Now, is
speaking
she
to the
saying
nurses,
come
not to the
forward?
doctor.
But is she saying come forward maybe? And I'm trying to think of this both ways. And state what this doctor did and speak up now as to what you witnessed? Or is she saying you were just as much a contributing factor in this? State what you did or didn't do
Yeah, it could be
and
either.
get that off your chest. Yeah, like it's
I
hard
tend
to
to think
say.
it
What
would
is
be
she
the
trying to
first
say?
one, but who knows? Who knows? I just found it very interesting. I was very surprised that she was speaking directly to the nurses. I mean, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. Again, we weren't there, but wouldn't you
Right.
assume that your anger would be more directed at the physician in this case rather than the nurses? But that's
I'm
not what she
thinking, do you
said.
remember after this happened, she did not want to see that physician? From what I
Oh, that's right.
understand
I
and what I've
forgot about
read,
that. Yeah, you're right.
she didn't want this doctor to come into her room, like because
Yeah.
I mean, she was traumatized. It's a
Hmm.
traumatic event. She's associating this physician with a traumatic event. Um,
Right.
so who knows? Maybe she is still so traumatized she's even uncomfortable addressing that physician even 6 months later.
Yeah.
It That's another thing. It's really that's a hard thing to say, like um or is it that she feels like the nurses are really at fault, and that all the fingers are being pointed mainly at only the physician, but that the nurses are, I don't know. It's like so many ways to think about it.
Yeah.
But before we get into the rest of this, what are we going to do, Erica? The
We're gonna do a
problem of the week.
problem of the week.
Erica's got a
Okay.
problem. Well, not
I
her. I don't know.
yeah, this one
Somebody
a
has a
nurse
problem.
Someone has a problem. A nurse messaged
Yeah.
me and said that they have been away from bedside nursing for some years. I think they've been doing clinic nursing, so outpatient, not acute care. But they do have a background in acute care nursing in the past. And so recently they decided to go back to bedside, and they have been applying left and right, and they're not getting anywhere. They're not getting interviews or anything despite all of their experience. And they asked me why. Like, they're desperate for nurses. Why wouldn't they be reaching out to me? I know why. It's the same problem we run into when a new grad never does bedside and goes directly into something like home health or, outpatient, and they never get that critical acute care experience. It's because we as managers don't know what to do with them for orientation. They don't fit in a box, and so usually you're allocated a certain number of new grad positions per year, per quarter, whatever they get approved for, and those are given the extended orientation times. And then you have experienced nurse positions, and those may only get a week or two, right? Well, this nurse obviously is going to not need a full new grad orientation, but they're certainly going to need more than a
Mm-hmm.
week, to get back in the swing of things. Lots of
Right.
things have changed, equipment, everything. So they
Yeah.
don't fit in a box. And how do you budgetary wise, you know, uh, kind of fight for how much they should get? They just don't fit in a nice little box. And I'm sure that's why they're not getting a call back. It can be really, really challenging. I would say try to call the manager maybe if you can reach them on the phone or send an email and say, and just address it and say, I know you might be concerned as it's been X amount of years since I've been at the bedside. I just want to reassure
Mm-hmm.
you that I have stayed on
I
top of my
will.
skills
Yeah.
or whatever, like I have 10 years prior. I'm ready to hit the ground running, whatever you need to do to kind of, set their fears aside. But yeah, that can be very, very challenging. And that's why I always tell new grads, no matter how much you don't want to do bedside, even if you didn't go into nursing to do bedside, for the love of
Right.
God, go get it and do a minimum of 1 year, preferably 2. But you've got to get it because it's not like you can't get hired anywhere else as a nurse, but it is going to be a stumbling block, a roadblock again and again and again throughout your career. You will get passed up. They will have doubts about you. You've got to get that minimum, all important 1 year at the bedside.
You know what I'm thinking? I know that this is a very specific thing because, they've been away from bedside, but I'm hearing this more and more. Like people are applying, though, for nursing positions and they know that they're there, but they can't find a job. Like it leads me to believe that these hospitals are acting or saying to the staff that they need more
Yep.
staff and they're looking, but are they really
No,
looking?
they're not. I've
Or
run into this
yeah,
myself and I've talked about this. Yeah.
that's what
They absolutely will put out ads, and say that they're hiring and list these open positions. And we all have known those nurses that have applied for those positions that we've worked with that have all of the qualifications and are great nurses, and they don't even get a call back. They
right.
are
That's what I'm
told
saying.
they're told sometimes, not always, not everywhere, but they are absolutely given directives from administration to not fill those open positions. I've seen that firsthand. I have gone to HR. I had someone that was, I could kind of talk to and trust in HR, and they would confide in me like, yeah, we have 6 open positions. We're told to fill 1. And then they turn around and tell the
Yep.
staff, well, we're doing everything we can. We've listed the positions. We've got the positions approved, but no one's applying. Yes, they are. They're applying. It's
Right.
terrible.
It's just they're trying to keep their budget and their bonus
Yep.
adequate for so that could be the real problem there to this nurse that wrote you. Maybe they're
It could
just
be.
not hiring anybody and they're just pretending like they are. Who knows? I guess we'll never know. But
Yeah. Yeah.
It sucks. I don't know. Nursing
Yeah.
sucks right now. That's all I
Yeah,
gotta
it does.
say.
Yeah, it does.
Well, there's
So-
that problem of the week. We have no answer for you, sweetie. Thank you for sending. Thank you for sending in your submission. We have concluded that sucks. I don't know.
That
Maybe
sucks.
apply
We concur.
somewhere different, a bunch of other places, or
Yeah.
follow the manager to her car. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't stalk the nurse manager.
Yeah.
Good luck. Hopefully
Yeah.
something will come up. Hopefully you'll find a place that will hire you.
Yeah.
All right, back to
Yes.
our story here.
So
What's going to happen next? What's going on now? Like where are they going from here?
Well, the attorney said something very ominous recently. This is the civil
Oh boy.
suit attorney. He said, "We're going to depose everyone who was in the room. The nurses, the scrub techs, everyone. Once we put them under oath, we'll know." So again, specifically mentioning the nurses, like going out of their way repeatedly to say not just everyone in the room, but the nurses. Again, the mom is pleading for the nurses. The attorney is saying, in my perception, we're going after the nurses. So it's concerning. It's really concerning.
You know, the whole thing is, when did this decapitation occur? You know,
Yeah.
for them to say that it happened in utero, okay.
Mhm.
Well, that's that can be I'm interpreting that as that it could have occurred during the C-section. Okay, because to me
Okay.
that's still in utero. Okay.
Okay.
But I think what everybody is thinking is that because the maneuvers were so with so much force and so much traction and so much pulling, that it happened during the shoulder dystocia and not inside of the mom. I'm trying to be very specific here. And that's where, okay, you obviously, if you put that much force and that much traction to pull the baby's head off, you've done something wrong. Okay, you should have stopped. Like at some point,
Yeah.
you should have maybe done the
Yeah.
Zalvinelli sooner, or whatever the case may be. So I think in listening to this, my instinct is that they are wanting these nurses to come forward and say that, in my opinion, yes, it seems like that happened during the shoulder dystocia, not while the baby was inside or during the actual trying to remove it during the C-section, because it makes a big difference. It makes a huge
Yeah.
difference of what kind of fault. Is this a criminal fault? Is this gross malpractice? Like it, I could be wrong, but for some reason, that's what my instinct is telling me, is that they want the truth out about when did this decapitation happen.
Yeah.
What do you think, Erica? Like,
I think we're going to know a lot
they're
more.
naming the nurses?
I think we're going to know a lot more when they do depose them, just like the attorney said, because right now we have not heard anything from anyone that was in the room other than the mom, you know. And as soon as we hear from anyone that wasn't any of the medical professionals, I think that that's going to give us maybe a whole different view on this. Who knows? But
have you been in a deposition, Erica?
No,
have you ever been in one?
I have not.
I have.
And they're scary. You have.
I have one time. And what I can tell you is, and this, when we were talking to, I want to call her Nurse Nicole. Not Michelle. I'm joking. It's not Nurse Nicole. We were talking to Michelle Hewins last week. She was giving some of what they prep you for, and I can attest to that. So before you sit down for the deposition, the attorney representing you will coach you into not to lie, but how to answer things in a way. They will tell you, if you do not 100% remember, like with every detail, you say, I do not recall, I cannot remember specifically. If they ask you your opinion, do you think this is the way that it happened. They will, especially if like the attorney that's there for the hospital is representing, the nurses and the physician, they will encourage you. I'm not a physician. It's not in my scope of practice to make that opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So you are like, it's terrifying. It literally is terrifying because you're scared that
Yeah.
you're going to say the wrong thing and either
And they twist it and use it
incriminate
against
somebody
you.
that shouldn't, or twist your words or make you look like you were negligent when you weren't. It's like you have to be so careful, and that's one thing that's like, it's going to be rough on these nurses.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really, really hard. Then
Stressful.
I'm sure they are not going to lay lightly. Now, when
No.
the other, the case that I was involved in, which is kind of crazy, it was also shoulder dystocia. These are the ones
really?
that usually, that are a lawsuit. The one I was involved in, the baby made it, but it ended up with nerve damage to the arm.
Mm-hmm.
That it will have that for the rest of its life. So they were suing the physician for, medical malpractice in that he should not have done the delivery vaginally, which is usually the case in what happens. 9 times out of 10, if an OBGYN is sued, it usually has to do with the shoulder dystocia. There's other things, but that's one of the most common ones. And, I remember the case, and like in my mind, I remember that I didn't recognize the physician had done anything wrong. And in all honesty, the shoulder dystocia didn't last long and all of that, but I still, it had been like 4 years and there were parts of it that I couldn't remember specifically. So you're like almost scared too to really give your opinion because
Did they let you review your documentation prior?
Yeah, they did, and it jarred some things, and it. But there were other parts, like I don't remember if I had the opposing attorney. I remember didn't have a great case, so I wasn't drilled by him that badly. He also wasn't in the room; he was on camera deposing me. So I feel like he kind of laid off on me just because I was like, if I charted it, then that's what happened. And I actually had done pretty good charting. I had charted, from what I remember, I think there was a cord once around the neck. I had charted shoulder dystocia. I wrote down how long it lasted. I think I wrote the maneuvers. So I'm like, if that's what I wrote, then that's what I did. Like I can't recall the specifics, but I can recall, I know my charting. And if I wrote it, then that's the way it occurred.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. But you gotta be careful. You have to be careful. That's why it goes back to charting.
Always.
Chart what you did.
Always.
Chart what you did.
I've had to testify in court a couple of times, like in Munchausen syndrome by proxy cases, but I've never been personally deposed. But yeah, that sounds very intimidating. But there is another twist to this story that I also just learned about. There is a second civil lawsuit against the pathologist who did the autopsy. Now this is crazy. These poor parents.
Oh, I hadn't heard this part.
Yeah. These poor parents have already been through so much. Guess what happens next? The pathologist posted the autopsy pictures and video on his Instagram.
Right. That's right. I remember that. I forgot about that.
What is
this? Is a train
wreck.
Thinking?
It is. My God. So his defense is that he didn't identify the baby, that there was no, HIPAA breached, essentially. I mean, and it's not the first time. He has apparently done this with other cases, posting pictures or videos for educational purposes. So they are suing for like emotional distress and for violating their privacy by posting these publicly. The attorney had a lot to say about this, said that the video showed graphic and grisly details of the postmortem exam of the decapitated, severed head, and that this is one of the
Oh my
most
God.
egregious and outrageous cases of clout chasing that we have ever encountered.
I remember I went and looked him up. I don't remember his name, but I looked him up on Instagram after this all happened. And yeah, he's a little bit like a cocky
Mm-hmm.
physician, like like he's amazing kind of thing. Because some of
Mm-hmm.
his other past stuff was still on there. The other one had been taken down, obviously.
He took one down, but then left others up, from what I read. I haven't checked.
I couldn't, when I looked, I couldn't find it. Now, who knows how long he left the other stuff up for or didn't, but what a ding dong, for lack of a better word. I mean,
and on
dude,
such a high profile case and such a unique case, because if you come across that, you're going to immediately know who that is, because how many other baby decapitations have you heard of? You're going to immediately know.
Exactly.
So those poor parents, after losing their baby, finding out from the funeral home 4 days later what happened, dealing with the lawsuit and the loss, and then they have to find out that the pathologist is posting it all over social media. Like, what?
Oh, God. This family, they can't get their baby back, and that's the worst part of it. But they deserve every dollar that is possible to come to them, in my opinion. Because, and that's not going to bring their baby back, and that's not going to make this trauma in their mind go away. But in my opinion, if I was on the jury, if they, if it ends up going to trial, I would award them every red penny possible, because this is a awful slew of a mess. I mean, they better settle out. I'm telling you, they better, if they should hope and pray, they better be making some good offers, because I don't even know. We all have to keep up to date with that.
We're definitely going to keep monitoring.
Please tell me that's it.
No, that's it. That's it. Knock on wood.
Woo! Yeah, so we'll the next time that stuff comes out, we'll do another podcast on it, because
maybe after the depositions, when we have more information.
Do we have an enema to give out this week? Do you have one, Erica?
We do have an enema award. This week, the enema award is going to TikTok, because what the hell, TikTok? Woo! What the hell? So their contract with, what is it, UCG, whatever company for their music rights, has ended, and they didn't come to any kind of a compromise or whatever. And so they have removed the music on like everybody's videos. And my first 2 years of videos, they all had background music, and they're not notifying anyone. So you don't know that the sound has been removed until you go in, and it's a hot mess.
I'm bitter. I'm bitter.
Are you? I'm bitter.
When you and I talked about this, Erica, when we talked about this before, I said that I wasn't sure, because like you were saying, they don't notify you. I started scrolling after I talked to you. 2 of my top 3 videos that have 4 to 5 million views, 2 out of the 3 are muted.
Yeah.
And you can't, they're like, oh, just replace the sound. It's not the same in any way, shape, or form. Like, it doesn't even make sense. So I'm angry. I'm
angry. And not only that, but they also took away all of the hashtag total counts. So they zeroed them. For what reason? I cannot for the life of me figure out why they did this. But for example, hashtag the nurse Erica was at like 22 or 23 million. And I know this isn't a big deal, but that's like over 4 years worth of getting it out there. Hashtag nothing. Now it's back to like 330 or something. Like, what? What? For what possible reason do we need to restart the hashtag count? I mean, can you think of any reason?
Numbers? numbers do go to infinity, TikTok. in case you didn't know.
You're not going to run out of numbers.
Stop.
Yeah.
You could have just left it to keep going.
I had
I don't know.
a hashtag red and black ribbons, the red and black ribbon campaign. That one was up to a few million. I want to say like maybe 10 million or something. And now it's down to like 100 or something.
The only thing I can think of is, I wonder if they reset it to show people what is trending now instead of what was trending. Like, I don't know. I either that or they just want to fuck with us. I
mean, it's just like another way to screw the creators, which this platform does all the time and always has. It's just never get comfortable on TikTok, because if you wait a week, some kind of shit will hit the fan and they will do something to mess with you. It's so frustrating.
You know what I was just thinking, Erica, is that with these enema every week that we give away, we need an enema sponsor. Fleets,
we do Fleets.
I'm just saying, it could be the Fleets Nurse Enema of the Week. We are open, people. That spot
a great
is there.
Idea. What other brands? I can't think of other brands. Can you?
I don't know, but I'm writing this down. I'm gonna look them all up. Fleets. That's all I can think of off.
We're gonna call it the Fleets Enema Award of the Week. That would be great.
Or whoever you are, company out there, whatever enema you are, that could be you.
Yeah,
you could be giving TikTok an enema right now, but we'll wait and see who reaches.
We need to do
who reaches out to us. Yeah. All right, guys, that wraps up this week's Nurses Uncorked. Please be sure to follow us on your pod streaming app of choice. Make sure you download the episode. We would love it if you'd give us a 5-star rating and a review. It really helps boost the podcast. And follow us at Nurses Uncorked on all social medias. Till next time.